Hi, welcome to 1500ESPN.com. I'm Derek Wetmore. This is Andrew Kramer. We're out at Lambeau Field where the Vikings just got embarrassed by the Packers. So they lost 42-10. Andrew will jump right into it, talk a little bit about the Packers pass and run game. We'll get to Christian Ponder's struggles, the reason why Teddy Bridgewater didn't play, and more in this video. It started with a pass for the Packers, deep shots down the field early, but then the Vikings could not do anything to stop the Packers' run and Eddie Lacy later on in the game.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously it starts off with Aaron Rodgers completing 2 touchdown passes first to Randall Cobb, then to Jordy Nelson, a 66-yarder, which ended up being his only catch of the game. And really, that was all he needed because they jumped out to that 14-0 lead. Ponder interception set up the next touchdown for a 21-0. And then by the end of the first half, it was 28-0. Ponder could really not create anything on offense. They couldn't get any running game going because it looked like Adrian Peterson was in the backfield because the Packers kept stacking the box because they knew no one was going to throw on him.
Right.
Because it was Christian Ponder back there. So really it was just an odd game in terms of how the game plan for the defense turned out on the Packers. Because again, they played it like Adrian Peterson was back there because they didn't really need to defend the pass all that much because Ponder couldn't get the ball farther than 10 yards downfield. The deep shots he did take were way off target, and the passes he did complete were just for short little 4 or 5 yard things that the Packers wrapped up right away. So the Vikings couldn't get anything going until that fourth quarter garbage time scores. Ponder ran for a touchdown. Blair Walsh kicked a field goal. Really, that's all she wrote. 42-0 after the third quarter.
I asked Christian Ponder if the not getting reps in practice, really just kind of being the third string afterthought to all of a sudden being thrust in as the starter when Teddy Bridgewater couldn't go with a left ankle sprain. I asked him if that impacted him at all. He refused to use that as an excuse. He said he'd wear this one, that he pinned the loss squarely on his shoulders. I certainly don't agree with him. I think there were a lot of people who performed poorly, but Christian Ponder certainly was one of those with the 2 interceptions, one of them returned for a touchdown by Julius Peppers, and that really just buried the Vikings early.
It did. It really didn't. It didn't put the Vikings defense in a great situation because really they started the game off with a 3 and out.
Yeah.
And then the next series, 4 play series touchdown. Next 4 play series touchdown. Then it was 3 straight 3 and outs. Vikings offense couldn't get anything going. For a while there, we thought, hey, maybe this will turn out like the Saints game where obviously New Orleans Saints jumped out to a 2 touchdown lead, and then the Vikings were able to make stops and then crawl back on offense.
Yeah.
There was just no offense to be heard of for 3 quarters here for the Vikings.
Yeah, I pointed that out on Twitter, and a lot of people were quick to point out to me that Teddy Bridgewater came into that game. Yeah, I know. But the defense also held tight against the Saints for the rest of the game, which allowed them to then get back in that game. Mike Zimmer said in his post-game press conference that he expects Teddy Bridgewater will start in 10 days when the Vikings play Detroit on Sunday. Obviously, the one advantage, I guess you could say, of playing this Thursday night game would be now that they have 10 days to rest up, get healthy, get Bridgewater back on the field. Andrew, what kind of a difference do you think that could make for the Vikings?
I honestly don't think Bridgewater would have won this game. I mean, obviously it would have been closer because you would have assumed there would have been fewer interceptions. The Vikings actually sustaining drives, keeping Aaron Rodgers off the field, which is the key when you're playing the Packers. But this offense should at least be somewhat revived next week against Detroit, having Teddy Bridgewater back under center, a guy who, when the offensive line breaks down, can at least make things happen with his feet. Christian Ponder took, I believe, 6 sacks in this game. He's taken 9 sacks in his last 6 quarters. It would be back to his last start last year where he took 3 in the first half and then left at halftime. So the guy just doesn't have any pocket presence, and we saw that again reaffirmed. If Rick Spielman had any doubts about Christian Ponder, at least what he had seen before this game, reaffirm what we already knew.
This one pretty much answers the question. Andrew, where do the Vikings then try to go and regroup? I mean, the run game wasn't really established tonight, but you and I talked in the press box just before coming down to the locker room that they didn't really even have a chance to get established because drives weren't sustained, passes that should have been completed for first downs were not, and consequently, whether you're between the tackles or trying to go outside to the end, you don't really have that many opportunities to establish the run game.
No, and I'm seeing Norv Turner call very drastically different game plans depending on who's at quarterback for him. When it was Matt Castle, it was a lot of long dropbacks and trying to get the ball downfield. When it was Teddy Bridgewater, it's a lot of short passes. Tonight, when it was Christian Ponder, they tried to get those same short passes going, but you didn't really see many screens. You obviously didn't see any read option stuff with Christian Ponder at quarterback, but really they just couldn't even get those short crossing routes going because when Ponder would get time, he was off target. And when he was on target, the receiver sometimes dropped the ball. So as Derek had pointed out earlier, it's kind of Murphy's Law. Whatever could go wrong did for the Vikings. And where do they go from here? Well, there was some good things to take away from defense. Some, not very many, but they did get Aaron Rodgers and the Packers with 4 3-and-outs on that first half. Those are some, at least, tapes to go back, plays to look back on tape and at least be proud of, but you might want to burn quite a few of this tape because really there's not much to take away in terms of moving forward for Matthew Stafford and Calvin Johnson.
Yeah, just get rid of the rest of it, basically, Vikings. The amazing roller coaster continues for the Vikings. What has been a season of the highest highs, the lowest lows, ups and downs just continue for the Vikings after a very impressive win against the Atlanta Falcons. Just come out with an embarrassing effort against the Packers. Mike Zimmer said he didn't think it was an effort thing. He didn't think they were flat. They just got beat.
Oh, and it's really just injuries, just bad luck. I mean, you got Kyle Rudolph out, obviously. Brandon Fusco, Adrian Peterson's away from the team. Matt Castle on IR. Teddy Bridgewater with a sprained ankle. Now, Cordero Patterson had to leave the game with a hip injury. We talked to Cordero just a minute ago in the locker room, and he said he doesn't expect to miss any time, which is a good thing. So they expect to have Cordero at full health and obviously Teddy Bridgewater to be back this week at practice.
That's about all the Vikings can hope for to regroup, is maybe get some of these guys back. Few of them aren't expected back anytime soon or at all this year. So Vikings have to regroup with the group that they have here, but maybe the fact that they've been able to get to those high peaks, now they're in a nadir, maybe there's a chance they see an upswing. I've counted them out before, and they bounced back with aplomb. We'll see if the Vikings can do the same thing next week against the Detroit Lions. That's it from Lambeau Field for this video, but there's also a Purple podcast coming later tonight and plenty of other Vikings coverage on the website. Keep checking back to 1500ESPN.com for all the best Vikings analysis, opinion, news, notes from the Vikings game here in Lambeau. For Andrew Kramer, I'm Derek Wetmore. Thanks for coming to 1500ESPN.com.